Here in about one more minute as I see a few more people coming in. So welcome guys, happy Friday. We just want to make sure every month that we're bringing you guys any and all important updates that we have as things are developing every single month, as we're all starting to see. I think it's a good sign. I think there's some good signs in a positive direction here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. I know a few more people are going to be joining us, but good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the COVID-19 update for September 2020. I'm Ryan Kuhlman, National REIA President. As always, we have Rebecca McLean, our Executive Director, and Lori Hudson, who's running the show behind the scenes, but also is going to be speaking to you guys today. Our man on the street, Director of Legislative Affairs, Charles Tassel, is going to be with us as well, giving you guys some important updates today. So with that, we have a few other announcements and a few other information to go over. So I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Rebecca.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I want to start off by saying a huge thank you to our broadcast sponsor, Home Depot Pro, and their new partner under our agreement, PPG Paints. So if you're curious about the program that we have with Home Depot Pro that is exclusive to National REIA members, it has discounts of 20% off on paint that are immediate. You don't have to earn into that, a 2% rebate, and other exclusive programs such as the cabinet program and the appliance program. So there's other things that are also coming. Take a look at those, and if you want to learn more, finding information through your local group would be helpful. We also have other benefit providers that you can learn about as well. You can see those here on the screen. And then we also have a host of other sponsors that have been really great with their support for us during this time, and therefore the support of you. Our mission is to promote, to protect, and to educate real estate investors. We've been around for over 35 years as a nonprofit supporting independent investors in the real estate space. And we want to say a huge thank you to you for being here, for being part of our local groups, and for supporting the industry, especially during this time. It's been interesting. Let's just leave it at that. And we've been trying to be here for you and to make sure that we're doing the best for you, as well as our local groups being there to support you. If you aren't part of a local group and would like to find one to support you, you can go to our website. It looks like this. And there at the top, you can just click on the button that says Find a Local Group. You'll see a map of the U.S. where you can find your location, click on it, and it'll give you the information about your local group. The other place you may want to visit on our website are the COVID-19 updates. You can see all of the things that are newsworthy and that may be resources as well on that page. You can also find other information as it comes to pass on realestateinvestingtoday.com. And Brad keeps that updated literally on a daily basis through the week. Just as a disclaimer, we are going to be talking about some legal issues today. If you have questions that are particular to your area, you need to seek the advice of a local attorney. And if it's about financial information, you need to seek the advice of a CPA. So if you have questions about things, please make sure that you consult those professionals for your business. This is just an overview and is just informational. It is not professional advice in any way, even though a couple of the people on the call may be CPAs or attorneys. We have Jeff Watson with us today, so I appreciate him being here, and want to turn it over to he and Charles to talk about the legislative issues. So guys, take it away.
Let's try that. All right, sorry about that. All right, let's see if we can get this working here. I got a little bit of lag. My apologies for that. Let's see if we can get this working.
Also, Charles, there's a little bit of echo as well. So if you're signed in under more than one account, or if you're on two different devices, you'll want to turn the audio off of them.
Trying to get that to work. My apologies, folks. I was trying to mitigate the lag, and
No, the
Made it
sound's
worse.
good. You're good.
Sorry about that.
You're good. You're good.
So, folks, here's a couple things. We did a video. We did a recording on this last week. I encourage you to take a look at that, review it. Mr. Watson and Mr. Greenberger both were on there. They gave some good advice, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And what am I talking about? What's the thing that everybody's talking about right now? It's the CDC eviction moratorium, and frankly, it is very problematic. This was a universal rollout, started on August 8th with the presidential update, and then was expanded on September 1st with specific rules from the CDC for a declaration for residents to say, one, I can't afford my rent. Two, I've done my utmost, or my due diligence, as it were, to look for federal support. And beyond that, I have, if I am moved out or if I am evicted, I would actually have to probably go homeless, and most likely that leads to the spread of COVID. Therefore, the CDC has this justification. Since then, that conversation, and it is recorded, I encourage you to take a look at that. There has been a lawsuit that's been dropped against it. And I will say this, one of the nice parts is it is not a part of the industry. This is another group that's out there looking at it. And what's important about that is this, folks. This issue has been recognized as far bigger than just our industry. This is a constitutional issue. And if, in this case, a president can come out and say, because of the health concern or this crisis, and how many crises have we had? Let's face it, every elected official loves to have a crisis because they ride in as the savior and solving the problems, and then it goes on to the next crisis. We never actually follow up with a resolution of it. We just have another crisis. And please forgive me for being a little jaded on this, but the precedent that this could set has been started to dawn on the rest of the world and the rest of the country, I should say. But that is why there is a current constitutional challenge to this, and that will most likely be joined by probably the Housing Coalition, but they're not the front people on it. This is a constitutional challenge because otherwise, I'm sure we can walk down a couple of imaginary lanes and say, you know what, smog is bad, and therefore it creates a health issue, and everybody who has asthma is problematic. And there's more people that have asthma than there were that were ever impacted by COVID. So therefore, by default, we're going to ban all fuel vehicles or fuel-based fossil fuel vehicles. That's the precedent that this sets. Okay, that becomes a very viable option. Those kind of broad bans could come in place. That's why this is being challenged. Now, the edict is in place until the end of the year, December 31st. That will most likely, as property owners, we know this, most likely going to create a tsunami of evictions at that time, a tsunami that was not currently occurring because we were working with our residents, we're figuring this out. And in the last 10 days, I have received information from a variety of property owners who have told me that their non-payments, people who said, I'm not going to pay or cannot afford to pay or will not pay, but I'm going to give you some sort of declaration at some point, has increased anywhere from 50 to 800%. 50 to 800%. Now, some of those might be small numbers to start, but let's face it, folks, when you start seeing those kind of increases, because the reality is this is what was done in September, those people will share it, and some will do the same thing for October. And then they tell two friends, and in November, they tell two friends. You know how this train goes. It is not good. It is not good for our industry. Now, part of the catalyst for this is because, plain and simply, the House and Senate have not
We lost you, Charles. We lost you, buddy. I know where
Jeff,
where
do
he
you
was
want to
going.
take this time while we're waiting to get him back to talk
Yep.
about some of the challenges that you've brought forward?
Yeah, I will. What the point that Charles was making, and I want to finish it, is that we're seeing this CDC moratorium on evictions because our elected officials in the House and the Senate have failed to do their job. They have completely failed to get the job done. They stand a couple $1 trillion apart in their proposed pieces of legislation, and neither side wants to back down. Neither side wants to cooperate and compromise. And so we've got this, and you have to look at this thing totally in the context of the lens of eviction and politics, but you also have to look this as in the lens of what will the next president or two presidents from now use this same policy to do. So I'm going to give a slight shift here, and the principle that National REIA has encouraged for decades is that good quality tenants are the real asset behind the rental properties. It's the tenant, not the house. It's the tenant, not the doors. It's the tenant, not the roof. That's the asset, because it's the tenant that pays the rent. Yeah, they pay the rent to be able to use a good quality, safe, affordable, healthy property. That's fine. So you've got to start going out and having better communication with your tenants. At times of unparalleled confusion, uncertainty, you've got to be over communicating. And I mean, I'm guilty of under communicating in almost every aspect of my life, Rebecca. You know that. I mean, that is, I'm bad at communication, but I'm trying to do better with my tenants. I'm urging everybody else, do better. And so I've shared with National REIA some things that I've come up with today to kind of walk you through the process of making decisions unit by unit, as well as how to reach out to your tenants and communicate with them so that you can get ahead of those tenants that want to unfairly or improperly take advantage of this CDC moratorium. I have no issue with a tenant that's got their hours cut down, they're working half what they normally do, and they're still offering to pay half the normal rent. I can work with that. A lot of us can work with that. What my concern is the tenant who is going to take advantage of this and say, I'm not paying anything even though I could. That's the problem. And so I've got a strategy available, got some documentation that you can start using as a landlord to put to those tenants just to solicit from them information. And remember, this is under the CDC, and that is one of the four things that you've got to look at. You also have to look to say, is there a state or local moratorium on evictions? And you also have to ask the question, is there an FHFA moratorium on the eviction? If you've got an FHFA loan on the property, you're stuck. And when I say it, that means a Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, GSE sponsored loan. You can't evict, you can't foreclose. You can't be foreclosed on either. So you've got to do your own due diligence. You've got to know what your properties are, how they're financed, who's in there, how they're paying, and so on. And then you've got to go back and double check with your local eviction council to find out is your local court still enforcing the CARES Act? Some are, some are not. Is your local court enforcing a local moratorium? Is your local court even open for virtual hearings, let alone in-person hearings? Is your state got a moratorium? And then you've got all those things to look through in order to determine whether or not you can go forward in eviction. But I'm also going to tell you, eviction is your last resort. Eviction is your last resort, because you've got to ask yourself the question, if I evict this tenant, can I get a better tenant in there? Who's it going to be? What's going to be their background? The other question to ask yourself is, will this unit be less expensive to me, to my bottom line, if it was vacant? Because if you can't get a better tenant in there, but it can be less expensive to your bottom line to have it go vacant because you've got a tenant in there that's not taking care of the property, that's causing damage, then you got to look at some of the some of the reliefs that might be available to you. And Rebecca, I can keep going on, and Ryan, you know, I can keep going on and on. So cut me off where you want to. If you got some questions you want to hit me with, that's fine, because I know we're waiting for Charles to get back.
Jeff, we talked about some solutions or things that could potentially be helpful on the last call. Do you want to go over a couple of those? I know Jeff Greenberger proposed something very interesting in terms of not evicting, but just kind of going after them for just lack of payment, period.
Right.
Could you cover some, and you had a couple as well. Could you go over just a couple of those?
Well,
and we can, you know, send them back to the full webinar for the full discussion.
So what I would tell you is Jeff Greenberger had a brilliant idea. Instead of serving a 30-day notice and then a 3-day notice and so on, what you do instead is, if you've got a tenant in there who's still receiving income, who's either collecting unemployment, who's still working, but they're not paying, don't try to evict them. Just sue them for the money that they owe you. Just sue them for the breach of contract. And go ahead, get the judgment, and then begin to collect on that judgment. Go after their bank accounts. Go garnish their paychecks. Because we're still in September. This moratorium is going to be there through the end of December. That's enough time to file, get service, maybe get a default judgment, and start going after it. But it's going to make that tenant realize, whoa, I still have to pay. I still have to pay. That was a great strategy. One of the strategies that I suggested in that recording is communicating with your tenant and helping them find other resources that are available to go get money to help pay the rent, making sure that they've filed for their unemployment, making sure that they've applied for any local grants, because last I checked, there is at least $200 billion of assistance money, 200 billion with a B, of assistance money that was part of the CARES Act going to state and local governments that has not yet been distributed, not been yet expensed, not yet been put out to the communities. That means there's still money available. Find out if your state, find out if your city, find out if your county, find out if there's anything local in your area that has programs for where your tenants can apply to get rental assistance help from. Be
Jeff, let me
willing
jump
to
in
work
really
with them.
quickly and give a couple examples. Here in Cincinnati, the Apartment Association has a rental assistance program, and they work directly with the Free Store Food Bank. On the multifamily side, they have given, I think, 120,000 away out of sheerly that rental assistance program to their members. But beyond that, the Free Store Food Bank, in addition to that, got dollars from the city, and Charles would have to tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm almost sure they got 2 million, of which they've only used 30,000. So if you can find out through either your local REIA, if they keep a list of these kinds of programs, or just through your city government of who those places are. Generally Catholic churches, Jewish churches, or Jewish synagogues, and social service agencies of that sort, they have programs. A lot of other religious organizations have programs as well. And there are just a lot of outreach organizations that have rental assistance funds that won't give it directly to the resident, but they will pay it to you on their behalf. And it may not be the full amount, but certainly it can often be up to a certain amount. And sometimes organizations like Free Store Food Bank will even help pay their utilities. So find organizations that are like that in your local area, and that can certainly be helpful to those residents who are looking for that kind of assistance.
Correct. Very good suggestion, Rebecca. Very good suggestion.
Actually, if I can chime in on that real quick, Jeff.
Please do. Please do.
Reach out to, and Virginia Housing Association or Housing Authority actually just reached out to one of our members and was building a relationship with them, in part because they are sitting on funds. And one of the things that's very key right now is the CARES funds that came out, the 200 billion that Jeff referenced earlier, is restricted to be spent on COVID related issues, and rental assistance is a key funding for that. I know counties that are setting anywhere from $1 million to $20 million aside for those for rental assistance. So reach out to your local authorities, your association, follow up with them, because the association will more than likely be part of the outreach and incorporated into the disbursement of that. They want you to be able to reach out to your residents and say, here's some funding mechanisms, here's something available. A couple of them locally were talking $1,600 is what they were actually doling out. That was the typical amount, and that's in a Midwestern area. So you know that there's a lot more funds out there available. So that's a key piece to it. Something else I want to mention, and we've kind of addressed this behind the scenes, and I know Jeff was talking about this a little bit, is there's a variety of, this is a uniform law or uniform edict, I should say, that was just ruled out as an emergency, no conversation, there's no feedback on it, no public feedback, and it's acted as if it was, this is going to be universally applied. The reality is, and we've been talking about this with a variety of attorneys and judges, that this is not only not being applied appropriately, it's being applied differently within each state, within each county, within each courthouse, and judges are learning on this. And I mean that, they're learning. Folks, we're 2 weeks into this. This is not something that, you know, courts and attorneys, and Jeff, you can comment on this. This is not typically how things are done. Usually there's a time for it to be rolled out. There's time for education on it. And people are literally being handed these on September 4th to walk into court with. The judges are like, what is this? I heard something was coming, but we mean there's paperwork already. Does it have to be in a specific form? Some are saying yes, some are saying no. When can it be brought in? When can discovery? That is something that, you know, your association, working with the local bar, the local attorneys, make sure you have experts giving you advice on this. And this is not a time to cowboy it or go rogue and try to do it yourself. The fines are anywhere from $100,000 and a year in jail up to $200,000 and a year in jail. And your LLC or your organization can be fined as well. So please understand, this is very serious. Follow the legal advice and do not be surprised when that legal advice changes. That is going to be the nature of where we're at with this, because people are learning.
Yep.
And can you guys address so some of the questions that are coming in are, you know, the original moratorium was on properties that had some kind of federal financing behind it or were getting federal financial support, Section 8, you know, anything connected to the PHA, and then it had to be Freddie or Fannie financed. But the new one is pretty much across the board. So can you talk about what the difference between this new moratorium is, and then can you also throw in there, you know, letting people know that their state and or even local jurisdiction might have something even more
restrictive.
Yes, please.
Right. So let me touch on that first, and then Charles, fill in whatever I miss. So we originally saw the CARES Act that said if you had certain types of government financing or payments revolving with the property, you couldn't do an eviction for any reason whatsoever. Period, no reason whatsoever.
Right.
CARES Act moratorium has expired in many areas. Some local and state governments have instituted their own version of it. The CDC moratorium that began September 4th, 2 weeks ago today, says you cannot evict only for non-payment of rent. It's only on non-payment of rent. So if there are other reasons that are valid to evict, such as health and safety, such as breach of the lease, such as overcrowding, such as damaging the property, such as overstaying the term, the lease expired, the month-to-month rental agreement is expired. Those are things that the CDC moratorium does not stop or block. It only blocks for non-payment of rent when someone is, and this is how it's supposed to work, when someone is able to, under the penalty of perjury, sign a declaration or affidavit saying, I've made my best efforts in this area, I've made my best efforts in this area, and because I am making partial payment, or I would make partial payment if I had money, you don't evict me.
Right.
Now, every court that I've seen so far is handling this differently. And, you know, Beth, I know you're frustrated in Philadelphia. Trust me, we've got the same frustrations in Cleveland, Ohio. We have magistrates that in Cleveland, Ohio, that are literally just applying the memorandum uniformly, not even requiring the tenant to sign anything. They're just saying, if any of this applies to you, boom, you're good. How you challenge those things, when you have a magistrate make a ruling like that, you're going to just have to go ahead, object to the magistrate's decision, get it to the judge, and take it up to the Court of Appeals. And yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun, but that's the way you're going to have to do it. Another way is, you know, and this is going to get technical, and then I'll get out of the technical. Have you thought about either a writ of mandamus or a writ of prohibition? Those are two other options that you can go, because you go straight and file with the Court of Appeals on those. So that's answering some of Beth's questions.
So Jeff, let me jump in there.
Okay.
And you were technical on one spot, and I want to make sure we covered this one aspect. The CDC restriction is specifically for non-payment when you're given a declaration. Okay, the resident still
gives the declaration. Yes,
correct. That tenant still has to do that declaration and bring it to you. Now, there's a lot of courts that I'm hearing are actually passing this thing out like candy, and literally courts, the magistrates, when they come into eviction court, are saying, "Did you sign this? Did you have one of these?" And literally handing it to them at that point. There's been a couple of judges recently. I was just on a meeting at 1 o'clock, and one of the attorneys had said, they actually said, well, can we actually, you know, not to say cross-examine, but can we ask some questions of them? And the judge said, well, I think that's fair. And in asking the questions, they said, so have you gone out? Have you been going out and spending money, doing things? And they said, well, yeah, we went out and spent money. We did this, we did that. And the judge said, so you thought that was more important than having a roof over your head? Okay, we're going to move forward with this eviction. So, you know, the judges are learning this too. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road right now. But this is a difficult situation. And I'm going to answer another question I saw come in there, which is, what if the resident, you know, gets money but doesn't spend it on rent? Folks, track it, document it. I go back to what we said in the recorded video message. Watch that, record and document everything you can.
If you've got a tenant that's going to post on social media that they're out clubbing or they went on a vacation with their unemployment money rather than pay the rent, that's the kind of tenant that you want to pursue. If you've got a tenant that's a single mom struggling with 2 kids, can't pay the bills, that's not who you want to go after, because the optics will not look good.
Can you guys also clarify, I mean, the CDC ruling is one thing, but a lot of the people that are on this call today are in states where the state restriction is significantly worse than the CDC's. You know, Jane has posted in the chat about Illinois. There are other states that are in that similar circumstance. So can you kind of outline the difference between what CDC has done and what they may be dealing with in their own state so they don't trip themselves up in other circumstances, please?
Yeah, and there's a decision tree that I shared that you've got to look at what the property is and ask yourself, is there a local or state moratorium? Read those, become very familiar with those, because where Jane is, you know, running a great chapter in one of the most difficult markets for a landlord in America. And if there's not a state moratorium, there's clearly going to be a city moratorium there in Chicago. That is going to be more protective of tenants than the CDC moratorium will be. You've got to pay attention to the most restrictive set of rules and follow those. So find the most restrictive set of rules that apply to you. So if you're in, for example, if you're in Illinois, you're going to have a state moratorium or a local moratorium that's going to be more restrictive on you than, say, if you're in Ohio. It doesn't matter if it's free and clear or not free and clear property.
Right.
Where I am, if you have a free and clear property and you do not have any Section 8 or any public assistance tenants in there, we can go ahead with an eviction, provided it's for something other than non-payment of rent.
Right.
Okay, we can go ahead with it. And so that's what I've seen happen. Now, you go 2 cities over from where I am, they're just uniformly going, nope, we're doing not any evictions because of the CDC. It's how each court's choosing to read that CDC moratorium. So look at what are the things that are going to apply to you. Start with your state and local, then look to say, is there anything else? Is there an FHFA? Because if you've got a conventional financing, which is Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, you can't. Okay, for any reason, you can't evict.
And then just a quick clarification on just not renewing leases on a month to month.
Under the CDC moratorium, if it's a month-to-month tenancy and you inform the tenant well in advance that, say, in 45 days at the end of October, their rental is up, and then they aren't out by the end, you got to tell them, hey, you got to give them more than 30 days, but whatever. So you let them know, and then they don't move out. Then you could go ahead theoretically and evict. But I'm going to tell you, pick it carefully. Don't be going after somebody who's trying to pay. Don't be going after somebody who can't pay but would if they could. Only do that to somebody who's posting pictures on Insta of their Cabo vacation, I'm exaggerating, instead of paying you rent. Because you're going to get into a optics and political war. Be prepared for it to go ugly. Charles, you and I have done some stuff on Capitol Hill and in the State House, and we know how hard you get attacked when they perceive you as being a rich landlord.
Correct. And the simple fact is, your optics point is right. We made the comment before, don't be that guy. Just focus in on doing what's right. And folks, I mentioned this to the leadership. Make sure you've got capital. Make sure your capital lines are available. This is going to get worse before it gets better at this point. We have voter voice out there. I encourage you, please go on voter voice, sign in, send your message, ask for rental assistance, and also let them know that this cannot stand. We cannot keep doing what we're doing. Go to voter voice. Lori will post that up in the chat, so you've got the link there. These are the kinds of things we have to do. And I know we're running over time, so I'm going to wrap us up with that. We are going to be back with this. And as more updates come out, as information like Jeff has brought forward from a tree perspective and kind of thinking through things, as we get more information, we'll be sharing that. But folks, right now, there's not a uniform response. Make sure you're paying attention locally to what you need to do. And Jeff, I want to say thank you for coming on today as well.
Yeah. Charles, if I could throw one more thing out, I know we're up on time. Hopefully Ryan and Rebecca will let us do this. But Min asked a great question. She's out of Texas. What if you help the tenant get funding assistance and they don't use that money to pay for the rent? If you're going to help the tenant do it, make sure that you instruct the agency paying where to send it. Make sure it's coming to your rental entity. Make sure it's coming to you, or put both names on the check so that it can't get used for a new big screen TV.
Most agencies, most reputable agencies
Correct.
that are of any size and kind of structure will not give the dollars to the resident. They will pay it to the landlord. But the landlord, also be prepared, because you're going to have to prove that you own the property. You're going to have to prove that there was a rental agreement. You're going to have to prove those sorts of things. But then the check will be written to you and or the utility provider or whoever it is that they're trying to help them with the provision of staying in their home.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
And just a quick answering this, if the CDC moratorium is ruled unconstitutional, that is not going to, as far as I know, affect the states. I mean, that's a state by state constitution level fight. Many of your local REIAs have sued or are in a coalition that is suing their local governments and or state governments. So that's happening in several states around the US. So make sure that you are in touch with your local real estate investor association to find out where that fight stands and how that is going.
All right. Are we out of time, or can I toss one other idea out there?
One other idea, and then I'll run quick through my economic update.
We promised Rebecca we'd only be 10 minutes. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Go.
And then you know what? Then I'll completely mute myself out, turn off my camera so that I'm not tempted to interrupt again.
Right.
National REIA has cultivated a very strong relationship with Equity Trust Company. Folks, this is a time when you may need to go locate a financial friend that you as a landlord are looking for some sort of small bridge loan from somebody else's self-directed retirement account. Don't be afraid to start exploring some of those relationships, okay? And National REIA has created a relationship. Equity Trust has the ability on their website to go in and you can post some things like that. Don't be afraid of exploring those things, looking for some short-term bridge funding from somebody else's IRA account.
And many of the local REIAs are still having not just a general membership meeting where they're speaking out to you, but they're having get-togethers where you can network inside that format. Don't be embarrassed. If there's a time for that format and you're allowed to make those kind of pleas, don't be embarrassed to make them. I think Jeff is absolutely right. It's what the relationships were there for. It's what one of the big values of being part of a REIA. Make sure that you use that value. Okay, guys, parting words, and then I want to run quick through an economic update.
Hang in there. That's all I'm going to say is hang in there. Get your finances in order. Stay in touch with people. Make sure you're communicating. Thank you very much.
Awesome, guys. Thanks. So let me then attempt to, we'll get back to sharing here. And talk about what we're looking at economically. So on the economic front, and really quickly, just to let you know, the reason that we go through kind of the economic updates is not just for entertainment, although I hope you do enjoy it, but the way the economy is going to affect jobs and consumer confidence. And all of that plays into whether or not people, consumer confidence plays into jobs, because things being sold, bought and sold, then provide employment. Employment means that people can either pay rent or can buy homes. And so as both a housing provider on the rental side or a housing provider on the rehab side, these things are important. So we'll go really quickly through them. The Bureau of Economic Analysis released its update to the second quarter GDP figure, which we reported a few weeks ago. And they say the output dropped 31.7%, but that's actually a little better than the original estimate. So should help us all feel a little better. Durable goods definitely is an improvement. 11.2% is an improvement. Durable goods are things like electronics, cars, household items, things of that sort, and that was mostly due to sales of cars and trucks. So the monthly job report came out, and it shows that businesses continue to hire and the unemployment rate dropped, and we're at 8.4% now as a result of the hiring. We also showed that unemployment claims showed marginal improvement as the number of Americans filing for benefits dropped back to 1 million, which we have been quite a bit above that for a while. And the number of continuing claims also declined. Yet labor markets, they have a long way to go before we get a full recovery. In addition to the government hiring for census jobs, there were jobs added in retail trade, professional and business services, leisure and hospitality, education, and health service sectors. So that's all very positive. We're at 1.37 payroll jobs added through in August, which is definitely an improvement. Additionally, the more recent weekly jobless claims indicator improved to its lowest pandemic level yet. The improvement is good, but the indicator is still 3 to 4 times. You can see here 3 to 4 times its pre-pandemic level, but certainly improving. There are many more job openings than during the initial pandemic shock. You can see these initial job openings of 6.6 million, and yet You can see the unemployed workers here, nearly 2.5 unemployed workers per job opening, which is way better than the 4.5 where we were. This is where we are now, the 4.5 where we were in April, but it's still higher than where we were pre-pandemic. But part of that is this was so low. If you've seen any of my industry updates previously, you'll know that this is just unnaturally low. So seeing this, which is a little closer to normal, just feels so bad because this was so low. Elevated jobless claims and rising payroll costs reflect the massive churn in the labor market as companies and individuals attempt to adjust to what, are enormous changes in the way we live and do business with COVID. So with COVID concerns, there's that are affecting school openings. They're still affecting some business openings. I know in Ohio and Kentucky, it's affecting restaurant and bar business still. And all of that is affecting consumer confidence. It's actually at the lowest rate that it has been coming out of even the worst of the pandemic. And the only problem with that is, like I said, people are less likely to kind of make those expenditures in purchases in general, and certainly in home purchases in some way. However, if you look at the news in housing, it's not affecting as much as you think. So mortgage rates have dropped to a 30-year fixed low, 2.86%. It's because of a slowdown in recovery. It caused interest rates to drop. They gave a boost to home buying activity, even though there are some higher prices offsetting some of the benefit, which we'll see in a moment. Big changes are expected after the Fed's meeting next week, and because August was inflation was only moderately higher than expected, I don't think you're going to see, even with the Fed's meeting, that I don't think you're going to see interest rates rise very much. But this meeting should give us some insight into where they're going over the next little bit. These exceptionally low mortgage rates are giving a substantial boost to mortgage activity compared to this time last year. We're up 28% in terms of mortgage applications at the end of August. Please note, by the way, I want to give a huge thank you to the realtors for most of this information. Adam Data is going to be responsible for the rest of the information, so a huge thank you to them. These notes will be going out to you in a replay with the call, so you don't have to be taking notes like mad if you're interested that you're going to replicate this for your other groups. And please note that this is kind of a mishmash between the end of August information and information that we get in September. It's the most recent information that I could get stats on. So as I said, even though mortgage rates are down and mortgage applications are up, some of the challenge here is that median home prices, though, are still rising. The Realtors Report was released in August, the latest one. It showed that while mortgage rates were friendly, there are other home buying challenges to contend with, like these rising home prices. It's a hefty 10% rise, and inventory is dipping, which is causing that. There are, I'm sorry, my mouse is just being so temperamental. Home asking price is up now on average to $350,000. And you'll see in a slide, this is coming out of August. And they thought, this realtors said at the time, their economists believed that this was going to top out. This is where it was going to end, because August tends to be the end of the heat, not just in climate, but in home buying. And yet in September, it actually, the median home price rose again. So pending home sales is at 5.9%, which is up again. So the rise in price is not stopping home buyers right now. While the economy is slowly trudging uphill, real estate markets are on a swift rebound, and buyers are looking for more space for home offices and amenities. We talked about this earlier. After being so cooped up, they really need more space, and they're looking, even with the high prices, to do that. The recovery index, because of these things, rose again for the 6th consecutive week here at the end of August, and it's a new high for 2020. So the demand is causing a lift in that. Look at the buyer's demand here. The buyer's demand index is still up yet again. That number keeps rising and rising. But the biggest challenge here is, inventory. And this buyer's demand is causing a real challenge because sellers don't want to necessarily part with their home because they're in the same catch-22 that first-time buyers are, in that they can't find a home that suits their need, especially in their price range, as those costs continue to rise. So because of that and many other factors, there were 493,000 fewer homes for sale at the end of August. That's, you know, quite a few homes, and it plays into why inventory is in such a problem. So you can see here the total listings are down 39%. Days on market, then, because people snapping things up, down by 12 days on average. And the median price, I told you realtors said that they thought they had topped out here at the end of August at this report, and then the next week came out and they were 0.2% even higher on their median listing prices. So it is still very much a seller's market right now. If you had the ability to and the resources to rehab during the pandemic, and you've got a house on the market right now, you are doing pretty amazing. We're going to talk about that when we get to the flipping trends. So 20 of the 50 largest markets now are above the recovery benchmark. But you can see here in terms of recovery in listings onto the market, these are the only markets where properties on market are back to where they were in volume. Las Vegas, San Jose, Phoenix, San Diego, and Oklahoma City. So still struggling in most other markets. On the rental side, the only slide I'm going to show you, because there's not a whole lot to talk about in terms of vacancies and those sorts of things, because of all of the eviction moratoriums that are happening, are the this is the NMHC rent tracker. You see here, we reported during this time about how confident we were and things were great because people had gotten their stimulus checks, but we were saying, guys, hang on, we won't start seeing the reality of things until those stimulus checks kind of start running out. And we are starting to see that here in September as those numbers start to decline. So stay tuned on this. We'll let you know where this is going. And then, of course, our legislative team will tell you as much about the moratoriums as we can report as they come along. So let's talk about home flipping trends. You can see that home flipping declined, but profits actually rebounded. We're going to see that in the next slide. There were 53,621 single-family homes and condos that were flipped in the second quarter. Those transactions represented 6.7% of all home sales in that quarter, and it's about 1 in 15 transactions. The figure is actually down. You can see here about 7.5%. Than the prior quarter, or 1 in 13, but it's up, you know, from prior years. So you can see these prior years, but down in terms of volume. However, because of the price of homes coming to market, the actual gross profit has increased. And so the typical gross profit from flipping in the second quarter is $67,902, about 41.3% return on average for flippers. It was at 38.9% in the first quarter, and then you can see it coming up here in the second quarter. And these are unusual trends. The fact that volume is down generally does not then show a gross profit that is increasing, but that has to do with if you have the inventory. If you are actually able to turn that around and you got it to market, you're doing pretty good because the pricing out there is just so good right now. So fewer house hunters, but there are price wars going on when they're bidding on homes. And I can tell you some stories we don't have time for today, but it's incredible to see how much people are in bidding wars on these homes. So you can see people have asked me to actually show where these things are happening. So I've amended the presentation to show that. The largest quarterly decreasing in the home flipping rate. So decreases are down, highest in Durham, Provo, Boston, Denver, and Salt Lake. And in the large MSAs, in addition to that, Minneapolis and Indianapolis are also down significantly too. The biggest increase in home flipping rates happened in Salisbury, Fort Myers, Tallahassee, Corpus Christi, and Kennewick. So there are some markets, 6% of the markets, where investors were able to double their investment on a flip. The gross ROI where you were able to double were in Hickory, South Carolina, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Youngstown, Ohio, Springfield, Illinois, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the smallest profit margins were in Raleigh, Myrtle Beach, Boise, Las Vegas, and Greeley, Colorado. And those had, most of these, at least Raleigh, Boise, and Greeley, had all been fairly hot markets prior to this. I don't know if a significant amount of that is due to cost of goods or regulations. Not sure what's happening there, but you can see that raw profits remained highest in the West and in the Northeast, and they were lowest in the South. Part of that has to do with just the ability to sell for a higher price in the South is just not there as much as it is in these hotter markets overall. So building supplies remain relatively straightforward in these areas, and just the pricing is so much different there. The highest second quarter 2020 profits measured in dollars, they were concentrated in the West and Northwest, or Northeast, as I said, and you can see that happening the most in San Jose. $305,000 profit margin, although getting into that deal also cost you a ton as well. Honolulu, you could have imagined that. San Francisco has been on this list for forever. New York, and then San Diego is actually a new addition to the list. 18 of the smallest in dollars were spread across the South, and that's where in Myrtle Beach, North Carolina, Killing, Texas, Lubbock, and McAllen. Those were lower profits on those flips. In fix and flip financing, you can see that home flips purchased with financing rose, while the portion bought with cash dipped. And part of that is just people hoarding their cash, trying to keep their hands on the cash and use it in other ways. So the highest percentage of flips purchased with financing in the second quarter were in Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, and Virginia Beach, and Hartford. The average time to flip nationwide has increased to 183 days. A lot of that has to do with COVID. I know when we were trying to do a couple deals, just trying to get building permits because you couldn't get into the courthouse, and trying to get clear title because you couldn't get into the courthouse, really caused an increase in the days that it took us to make things happen. And so this is going to continue to be a challenge as long as there's COVID restrictions on entry to the courthouse and who can be there, and you know, how they have to proceed to be able to do what they need to do to get a deal done. The percentage of homes flipped sold to FHA buyers increased to the highest level in 3 years. So generally, we're going to call these first-time home buyers. That's generally who's getting an FHA loan, and that has happened the most in McAllen, Stockton, Bakersfield, Visalia, and El Paso. We also are starting to see a little bit of a rise in foreclosures. It has been so low, and guys, it's still the lowest it's been since 2008. So we're not, although I'm going to give you these numbers, it's nothing to get excited about, and don't think you're going to be able to go out and buy a bunch of foreclosures cheap because you know there's this big wave. It's not happening, and especially with the moratorium on Freddie and Fannie, that's going to be a bit. But you can see that you are seeing some movement on this. The top 10 U.S. counties with the greatest number of foreclosure, you can see here: Los Angeles County, probably no big surprise, Harris County, Miami-Dade, Cook County, which is Chicago, Duval, Broward, Palm Beach County, Jefferson County in Kentucky, which is Louisville, Hidalgo County in Texas, and then Riverside County there in California. So states with the highest foreclosure rates right now are South Carolina. 1 in every 6,798 housing units has a foreclosure filing. Florida, Iowa, Maryland, and New Mexico are the highest foreclosure areas. And the big metros that then follow that, or smaller metros that follow that up, are Shreveport, Ocala, Cedar Rapids, Lakeland, and then McAllen again. States that saw a slight increase from last month, including those posting double-digit month-over-month increases, are Florida, New York, Indiana, Mississippi, and New Jersey. And you'll get all of this in this slide presentation as the follow-up from this. But lenders foreclosed on a total of 2,035 U.S. properties in August. That number is down 6% monthly and 82% annually. It's the lowest we've been since 2005. And so that's what I mean. Since we've been tracking this, it's just continued to be lower and lower. So foreclosures is probably not a place that we're going to be able to play in right now, even though you're seeing those changes. And so the greatest number of completed foreclosures here, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Texas. But then we have the zombie foreclosures. So you are seeing those being a challenge. And this would help some of our inventory issues if they could get these cleared out. The big thing for those of you that are in Cleveland or near, Jeff Watson, you see how close, you're kind of close to Cleveland. See how many of these zip codes that are the highest in the zombie foreclosures are here in the Cleveland area. But you also have Peoria, Illinois, Watertown, New Jersey, Gloverville, New York, Dalton, Illinois, and Jamestown, New York as well. So some of those zombie foreclosures there. Zombie foreclosures are those where the foreclosure process has started, but there's actually no one that it's not moving on. They're sitting there empty and vacant. The states where zombie foreclosure rates exceed national average are Kansas, Missouri, Georgia, Kentucky. It's the only time I get to see us on the list is in one of the worst places on the list. That's just very disappointing, I have to say, and Tennessee. So there's the review for this month. We post ongoing activity on realestateinvestingtoday.com. Brad Beckett, I wanted to give him a shout out. He does an amazing job week after week getting the industry statistics out to you, making sure that you're informed and able to know what's going on in your market. I apologize, I can't give the presentation and read what's going on in the chat. If you have something super specific that you want to send to me as a question, feel free to do that at rebecca@nationalreia.org. But as I said, these statistics will go out to you, the full presentation will, with the replay of the call, so that you will have those for your local groups if you're a leader and for your own personal use as an investor. But with that, Ryan, I can't believe it. I made it on time, and I'm going to hand it back to you.
4:59. I don't know. We've been doing these enough every single month now that you're getting good at it. So, well, thank you, Rebecca, for that information. It's very good for us all to kind of see these things that are going on and how everything is developing. We greatly appreciate all of you attending today and being here. Of course, National REIA is here for all of you as well, so you can reach out to us through our website and through Rebecca as well. We want to thank Charles Tassel and Jeffrey Watson for being here and giving the information, as they have a lot of insights working on a daily basis on a lot of these issues with CDC and the small business loans. We will expect to see you guys back here. We will be having our next call for October. I believe that's going to be October the 16th, Friday at 4 p.m. Where we will have another update on the information that we gave today. In the meantime, you can reach us through nationalreia.org. Wanted to say thank everybody again for being here. Have a happy rest of your Friday, a great weekend, stay safe, and we'll see you guys on October the 16th.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.